So we're in a series called Relationships, like relationships, but chips. And we are looking at different scriptures, different aspects of relationships that we all experience. We all experience these different types of relationships, these different aspects of relationships. And relationships are not limited to romantic relationships. So I feel like a lot of times whenever us church people have relationship Bible studies or sermons or series or whatever, it excludes, we go out of our way to intentionally exclude certain people in certain types of relationships who either have or do not have specific types of relationships. But all of us have relationships, and we're all in relationship with everybody, really. Sometimes a relationship is just like, I don't know your name, so I can give you the head nod. If we look like we come from the same continent, I'll give you the, how's it going? How you doing? I know you know what I'm talking about. And that might be as much relationship as we have with a person. Or it could be the other kind of relationship, the one we all think of when we think of relationships. And some of us tune out. It's like, oh, relationships. This one's not for me, but this is all for all of us. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 29 tonight. When we started this series, we started out in Genesis, a little story about a guy named Jacob. And we're going to look at a little bit more of his story. Again, as was the case the first week, any of our guys who are with us have already learned from some of this, but we didn't get it all away. So they'll hear it again, and some of you will hear it for the first time. But we're going to look at it from the perspective of relationship, which is different than how the guys looked at it a while back. Genesis chapter 29. Genesis 29. I have my Christian Standard Bible today. Doesn't matter which one you have, but if you have a CSB, then we could read along and the words will be exactly the same, unless I paraphrase them as I go. If you do not have a physical Bible, please let us know, and we'll send you one. Genesis chapter 29, and I'm going to read this brief portion of a story, and then we're going to taco about it. Genesis 29, starting at verse 18. Jacob loved Rachel. So he answered Laban, I'll work for you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Laban replied, better that I give her to you than some other man. Stay with me. So Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, since my time is complete, give me my wife so I can sleep with her. Very direct and to the point. So Laban invited all the men of the place and sponsored a feast. That evening, Laban took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and he slept with her. And Laban gave his slave Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her slave. When morning came, there was Leah. It even has an exclamation point at the end so that we can capture the surprise. So he said to Laban, what have you done to me? Wasn't it Rachel that I worked for you? Or excuse me, wasn't it for Rachel that I worked for you? Why have you deceived me? Laban answered, it is not the custom in our country to give the younger daughter in marriage before the firstborn. Complete this week of wedding celebration, and we will also give you this younger one in return for working yet another 7 years for me. And Jacob did just that. He finished the week of celebration, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. The word of the Lord is already blessed. Father God, thank you for your word. Show us what we need to see. Give us guidance for our relationships. so that we can navigate them properly and healthily. In Jesus' name, amen. So I want to give a little background on this, just a little tiny bit. If you missed the first week of this relationships series, we were in Genesis 25, and this is where Jacob steals his brother's blessing. His brother Esau was the older twin, and Esau was supposed to get the blessing from his father. And Jacob's mother worked up a little trickery and enrolled Jacob into this trickery, and Jacob participated, and what was at first just his mother's trickery became his own, because he took ownership of it, and he committed the crime himself, and he had to pay for it because he had to leave his home, even though his mother told him, "Oh, don't worry about it," because he had reservations at first. Like, should I try to trick my father? He wasn't really worried about stealing from his brother, but he was worried about, like, isn't Dad gonna notice that I'm not his other son? And his mom was like, "Don't worry about it. Whatever happens, whatever curse there might be, let it be on me." Because he was like, what if I get cursed instead of blessed? Don't worry about it. It'll be on me. But then when push came to shove and Esau was mad and in a murderous rage, then Jacob's mom was like, "Yeah, you got to go. Your brother wants to kill you. And so you got to go. Sorry, it didn't work out the way I said that it would, but good luck to you." And so he goes, and she sends him off to her brother, who is Laban, who we heard a little bit about in this story. And so he gets there, he meets the people. Laban is his uncle, Rachel is his cousin. Yes, it sounds weird in today's context for him to fall in love with his first cousin, but it doesn't seem as weird when you realize that his parents were also cousins. Different times. This is literally antiquity, thousands and thousands of years ago. So it's not the same as it is today. So this is not the Bible telling us to marry our cousins. Just, I wanted to make sure that was clear. Jacob wants Rachel, and so we get to this part, and there's some things here that some relationship interactions. So first of all, I have to show you this just because it's hilarious to me, and it has a little bit to do with what we're talking about, because it is about relationship, but it doesn't really apply to this specific message. In Genesis 29, like, go back up to verse 13. So this is where Jacob meets Laban. His mom, Rebecca, sends Jacob to go stay with her brother, Laban. So this is Uncle Laban. Verse 13, when Laban heard the news about his sister's son, Jacob, he ran to meet him, hugged him, and kissed him. Because they're family. It's like, oh, we family. So he greeted him as was customary. Then he took him to his house, and Jacob told him all that had happened. Now, I just gave just a little tiny bit of backstory about how Rebecca wanted to deceive her husband. She got her son to participate in it. And even though she said that she was going to take whatever consequences came, Jacob still had to take the consequences, and he had to leave because his brother wanted to kill him. And so he had to go, and he was sent off. And part of his sending off, this is also, like, the whole story it's funny to me because like really read the Bible, because it's hilarious. And most of it is showing us what not to do. But as he was leaving, his father blessed him as he was going. And he told him, whatever you do, don't marry a Canaanite woman, because Esau, his brother, had 2 wives, and they were both Canaanite women. And Esau's wives gave Isaac and Rebekah all types of problems. And so he was sent off, and like, don't marry a Canaanite woman, because we don't know. It's just not going to be good. Because why not stereotype an entire group of people based on your experience with one or two of them. That makes sense. So Jacob tells his uncle Laban everything that's happened, including all of that nonsense. And here's Laban's response. Laban said to him, "Yes, you are my own flesh and blood." Like, ooh, that story sounds really, really messy and chaotic. We're absolutely family. It's hilarious to me. Not part of what we're talking about tonight, but it's there, and so I had to say it. Otherwise, it was going to bother me. So now here we are, and Jacob says, "I want to marry Rachel. I'll work for you. Let's do this." And Laban is like, "Sure, why not? Like, better you than somebody else," which shows a lack of thoughtfulness for his daughters. This isn't a point. It's just something worth pointing out. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. Better you than some stranger. At least we're related. I know how crazy your family is because we're family. That wasn't very thoughtful. So verse 20. So Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. And the first point that I want to draw out is that we have to work for the relationships we want. Now, in this case, Jacob worked like manual labor for 7 years because he wanted a relationship with Rachel. Now, this applies to us. How? Because we're not necessarily working for a spouse or anything like that, making deals with people's parents in order to purchase their children as a spouse, which is what was happening here. Notice nobody asked Rachel. But he worked, and it only seemed like a few days. In all of our relationships, and let me define some of our relationships. Relationships could be significant other, a partner, a spouse, friends, like regular friends, best friends, could be cousins. Could be a parent-child relationship. Maybe you're the parent and you have a child, or you're the child of a parent. All of us are a child of a parent, but the relationship could be between you and a parent. Literally, us and any other human being, we're all in relationship. These are all relationships. That's only a few relationships. But in any relationship, to have the type of relationship that we desire, we have to work for it. It does not just happen. Some type of agreement or arrangement has to be made. Like, okay, what is it that I want with this relationship? What do I want it to look like? If it's a relationship with let's say a parent, maybe you weren't close to the parent growing up, and so when you became an adult, you kind of went your own way, but you want a relationship with this parent. So we have to figure out what is it? We can't just be in relationship mindlessly. And I fear, based on my own personal experience with myself and how I've managed some relationships, I fear that we just are in relationship haphazardly, like no intention whatsoever. A lot of times we think the only time we need to have intention about a relationship is when we're trying to get married. And while it is true that there should be some intentionality about that type of relationship, what is false is that is the only type of relationship that we should have some intentionality about. We need to be in relationship on purpose. Get a picture of what that relationship is. Like, think about it. Who is it that you are working to, who you want to have a better relationship with? And then figure out, okay, well, what would that relationship look like? In Jacob's case, that relationship was with Rachel, and the relationship that he wanted was marriage. And so he worked for that. In this case, it was manual labor for Rachel's father. But in our context, whatever relationships we're in, whatever the outcome is, whatever the desired outcome is, and whatever the time frame that has been set, not saying necessarily that we should put time frames on certain types of relationships, but on some of them we should. Like, if we're not able to achieve what is desired and healthy for all parties involved in this much time, then maybe we ought to redefine the relationship. And some relationships are close, and some relationships are on opposite ends of some boundaries. But we have to work at it. It's not just going to happen. We do not just magically have friendships. Think about a close friend. Think about a close friend, somebody who, like, ride or die, ace. Like, if you have someone like that, not all of us do, but if you have or have had someone like that, like, think about everything that transpired in order to get to that point, in order to get to that status of relationship where they're like the emergency, they're the ice contact in your phone. If you don't know what an ice contact is, ice is in case of emergency. Nowadays, our phones actually have little emergency designations. So if something happens to us, somebody can already know who to call. But what has gone into those relationships for that person to be your emergency contact? What types of things have you done for that person? What types of things has that person done for you? So whatever it took to get there, it's not going to be the same for every single relationship, but there is going to be some work. There are going to be sacrifices that have to be made along the way. We talked about that last week, the relationship between Jonathan and David, and what Jonathan gave up. Jonathan sacrificed, gave of himself to have the type of brotherhood relationship with David that he desired. And so whatever the relationship is that we desire with whomever, the same way that something had to be done, some things had to be given up along the way, some things had to be worked out along the way for that person to become your emergency contact. If we desire emergency contact level relationship with another person, then there's going to be some work to get there as well. You can't just, like, go in your phone and I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to designate this person as an emergency contact because I want to be best friends. So I'm going to decide now that they are the person to call when things are really going haywire. I would recommend against that. In order for someone to be designated as the emergency contact, I need to know that you're going to be there. And the only way to know that you're going to be there is that you've been there. We didn't get to this point just because, like, oh wow, you're cool. No, that's what you do on social media. Like, wow, we had a fun interaction, engagement with each other, so let's follow each other, and then that's it. And, like, that's okay. But emergency contact, like, we're gonna put, like, at random person on the internet, $, emergency contact, call this person, tweet this person if something happens to me. No, work has to be done. We have to work for the relationships that we want. The next thing, in the very next verse that we see is that it's important to define the relationships that we are in. We need to define the relationships that we're in. And, well, let's see what it says first. In verse 21, we're in Genesis 29. Then Jacob said to Laban, since my time is complete, give me my wife so I can sleep with her, so I can know her, so we can have a husband and wife relationship. He was very straightforward about what he wanted, what the expectations were. But let's break this down. And this is not about shame on you if you did this in the wrong order. We can beat each other up some other time. But there's definition here. My time is complete. I've put work in. And he says, give me my wife. I've put the work in for this person to have this label of relationship. You don't just become the ice contact without some work being put in. You don't just become BFF without some work having been put in. We ain't going together. We don't just go together unless we've been out somewhere. Like, this is not elementary school where you just circle yes and we go together now. No, we're grown, and when we're grown, like, something has to happen. $200 dates should have been had. I'm kidding. They don't have to be $200. Get creative. Do it for $20. 2 for $20. ball on a budget. But there has to be definition to the relationship. What is this relationship? Because I'll say that next. Let's just stick with that. We have to define our relationship. What is the relationship? What is this relationship supposed to be? I'll go back to the relationship between a child and a parent, like adult child and parent. What is the relationship supposed to be? Oftentimes, there can be, I have seen that there can be some contention between an adult child and their parent, because the parent still sees them as the child, but the child is grown now and is looking for a different type of relationship. And if there is no definition around that relationship, then the child may be seeking to have like a partnership, like a friendship, like we were peers, and the parent is like, not where we come from, we'll never be on the same level. I took care of you. Like, no, you left me with strangers. Nah, but did you die? Like, there has to be some type of agreement. Like, what is this? And I don't, and look, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's necessary to send the text message, the one that says, what are we? But see, we should be asking that question in all of our relationships, every single one of them. Like, don't just wait until like you've been going on second and third dates for like 8 months to ask the question. So what are we like, are we dating, or like, well, yeah, technically they're dates, so we've been dating, but no, like, what is the word for this relationship, right? That's not the only type of situation where we ought to ask the question, what are we? And maybe we don't ask the other person. Maybe we don't ask the other person. In fact, I would advise against asking someone else to define the relationship that you are in or that you desire. We need to define for ourselves. Okay, define for ourselves, what is the relationship that we are in, or that I desire, that we desire to be part of, and then make sure that there's some agreement there. But there has to be definition. If there's not definition, like scripture says, I think it's in Habakkuk, however you say it, without a vision, the people will perish. No, that's in Proverbs. I think it's write the vision, make it plain, and they will run. Those who read it will run. But there has to be some type of vision for the relationship, something to define it by, so that there can be an understanding of what is expected, what is, and maybe not expected. I've learned, my therapist told me a long time ago, consider replacing expectations with desires. And he didn't say this part, but in my experience, expectations are just setups for disappointment when we place an expectation on another human being. But if it's a desire, this is what I would desire, and we don't always get what we want. And so we can then measure by how close we get, as opposed to how far it fell short of what we were expecting. But whatever it is that we desire in a relationship, that needs to be defined, so that one person is not thinking this over here, like, oh, we just cool and we only hang out sometimes. And the other person is thinking like, no, if I don't have gas in my car, I can text you to cash at me $20 and you'll do it. Like, we need to be on the same page. Not that you have to have talked about every single scenario specifically, but there should be some understanding about the type of relationship it is. Don't just go asking anybody for money. How about that? I'll leave it at that. Don't just go asking anybody for money just because they're there. Like, oh yeah, we text a few times. Let me ask them for some money. No, that needs to be established within the relationship somehow, some way, some form, somehow. And let me just throw this in there, gentlemen. Well, no, let's be equal opportunity. Whoever asks the other person on a date, establish before the bill comes Really establish before you go, before you get there, before the venue or restaurant is chosen. Establish, as Jarrell Quinn would say, who gonna pay for it? Who gonna pay for it? Whenever my wife shares with me a really great, and I mean this genuinely, a really great idea or vision for something for our family or for our church, for our community, like they're really great, but then that's my, I love it, but who gonna pay for it? Have that conversation. Don't get to the end of dinner. Don't get to the end of dinner and be like, 2 checks, please. Two what? 2 checks? You got to pay with 2 different cards? Like, make sure that's clear, because if you end up on the like the chin view of somebody recording on their phone the conversation that they're having with you on the date while you're not paying for the date that you invited them on, if you end up on the Summer Jam screen, I won't have any sympathy for you, because you failed to communicate who gonna pay for it up front. That's not in the Bible, but I figured it fits in with let's define what this is. Let's define what this is. The next part, the reason is because, and this is kind of a point, well, it just is what it is. Certain aspects and privileges of a relationship are only available when the relationship is clearly defined. Certain aspects and privileges of a relationship are only available when the relationship is clearly defined. And again, we see, I'm not going to keep reading it because it may be graphic for some, but like it says in verse 21, my time is complete, I've done my work, give me my wife, and then we're going to have a husband and wife relationship, which suggests, in this context, again, we're not going to beat each other up about all that other stuff about how we may have done it, but it suggests in this context that those privileges come with the type of relationship that he has sought after and worked for, so that we don't just go into a situation thinking or expecting that a certain outcome is going to take place. It was like, that's not even the type of relationship this is. There are certain things that's unreasonable to desire or expect. Again, replace expectation with desire, but it is unreasonable in certain relational contexts to expect a certain outcome that does not fit how that relationship is defined. I occasionally like to have a glass of water in a wine glass, and because of the Holy Spirit and Jesus is in me, it turns to wine. Maybe a Cab, maybe a Malbec, usually Pinot Noir, Pinot Grigio if I'm feeling light-skinned. Occasionally I like to do that, but there's certain people I'm not about to just pop a bottle of wine open with certain people, because that's not our relationship. Like, I'll use my dad as an example. My dad doesn't drink. He gave that up before I was born, because my life would have been a wreck if he hadn't given it up, according to how he tells the stories. So like, that doesn't fit within the context of the relationship that I have defined with my dad. We're not about to drink together. It's certain things that can only happen in the context of certain relationships. And that is why it is necessary for us to define the relationships, for us to identify, okay, what is this relationship? What are we working towards? And again, this is not just romantic relationships. In fact, like, let's try to get romantic relationships out of our head, because we are currently in, and will have by the end of our lives, we will have had and currently have more non-romantic relationships than romantic relationships. So if we restrict these relational concepts to only romantic relationships, then it is very possible, unless we're getting it right by accident, that we are failing in so many other relationships because we're not being careful to do some of these things. We're not working for the relationship that we want. We're not defining the relationship, and then we may be having improper desires or expectations of a relationship because it wasn't well or clearly defined. Let's keep reading. Let's keep reading because there's a couple other things, at least one other thing that I want us to see. Verse 22. So Laban invited all the men of the place and sponsored a feast. I imagine that somehow, like, this is where it came up that the bride's father would pay for all this stuff. I'm pretty sure, like, a lot of the things that we consider to be like social norms and have some biblical backing are just something that was taken out of context or twisted to achieve somebody's personal agenda. Anyways, that might be where it came from. Verse 23, that evening, Laban took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and he slept with her. And Laban gave his slave Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her slave. Then morning came, there was Leah. That was not the agreement. That's not the relationship that Jacob set out to have. So he said to Laban, what have you done to me? Wasn't it for Rachel that I worked for you? Why have you deceived me? So I didn't type this out, but you can write this down in your notes, whatever way is right for you. Jacob had participated in some deception himself. Like, it's well documented that Jacob had done some deceiving. Some of it was his own idea and some of it wasn't, but he's the one who did it. And so in relationships, one way that I've heard it put is that, like, folk really hate when you them, right? And Jacob got hemmed, like Laban hemmed him. But why did you deceive me? We should not have any expectation that other people are going to treat us better in relationship than we have treated others. You can call it do unto others as you would have others do unto you. You can call it karma. I don't care what you call it. It doesn't matter what you call it. It is wholly unreasonable. We are wholly unreasonable people when we expect people in relationships to treat us better than we treat other people in relationships. Where do they do that at? Like, there are a few words for that. A lot of them are overused, so I'm not gonna say them. They get overused on the internet, and I don't want to sound like a podcast dude. But there's a problem when one person in a relationship behaves one way, but expects a different level of treatment toward themselves. I think it's safe to say that we would all advise against that. But yet and still, Jacob does it here. The whole reason Jacob is even here is because of deception. And then he gets deceived, and he's gonna be, and what? Why would you deceive me? Why is this happening to me? Does anybody know why is this happening to me person? And everybody, it seems like everybody but them knows why it's happening to them. If you don't, then you might be that person, and we can talk about it. Like, it can be better from this point forward. But it seems so often that somebody somewhere, nobody that we know, is always a why is this happening? How could this happen to me? Well, remember how you did so and 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 so, but that was different. Yeah, but no, I deserve better. How? Why? We shouldn't expect it. So we should, like Jesus said, treat others the way you want to be treated. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, of course, once you learn what they want, I saw somebody tweet, I got to say this because the internet, Twitter has taught me to add a disclaimer to everything. Every 280 characters I speak, I got to add a disclaimer because I saw somebody say, no, really, you should do unto others as they want you to do to them. And I don't have time. There's a lot of reasons why that's not true, because a lot of us have low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-image. We've been treated poorly for a really long time. And so that's all we know. No, I need to treat you no less than the way I want myself to be treated. Folks be trying to overanalyze and be over analytical with the Bible to try to prove that it's wrong or something, or that we so smart. No, I need to make sure that I'm not treating you any worse than I would treat myself. Now, speaking for myself, I can be very hard on myself, which causes me to be very hard on other people. And so, mentioned this before. Grace, God's grace is available to me. I need to have it. I need to accept God's grace for me and thereby extend grace to other people. But we shouldn't be expecting, like Jacob did, not to be deceived. Like somehow we exempt from being on the receiving end of the behavior that we deliver. Verse 26, Laban answered, "It is not the custom in our country to give the younger daughter in marriage before the firstborn." Now, this is not just deception. This is manipulation. Laban knew what he was doing. Laban plotted and planned for 7 years. And it's unfortunate that people don't always tell us who they are up front, or that we don't catch the signs and signals up front. It really is. We don't always see it. And it is such a shock, and it is so disappointing when we find out that somebody is who we didn't know them to be because they presented themselves to be a different way. Laban presented himself as a man of integrity, a person of his word. Why? But he gave his word. Like, why would you give your word if you don't intend to keep it? That would make you a liar, like from jump. If you have no intentions of keeping your word in relationships, then you are a liar from the moment that you give your word. So don't be a liar. Write that down. That's a point. Don't be a liar in relationships. That's what Laban did. It's not the custom. He knew what the custom was. He knew what he was about to do, but they're a messy family, and he figured, I don't know what he figured, it doesn't say, but they messy. He did some messy stuff. Verse 27. Now here's the part, because I just said, and we all know that sometimes we don't find out who a person really is until later, because they have actively concealed it from us. I'm guilty of, I have done that. I have actively concealed parts of myself so as not to be found out for one reason or another. I could give you reasons and validations and excuses, but I've done that. And it's not right. But then, once somebody tells you who they are, once somebody shows you who they are, exactly, believe them. Like, you already lied to me once. Now I'm gonna think. Now I'm gonna convince myself that you're lying about being a liar, even though you lied. Make that make sense. Believe people. In a relationship, it doesn't matter how hard you've worked for the relationship, what you're trying to define the relationship as, what type of privileges and benefits you're trying to achieve in this particular relationship. Once somebody shows you they're not worthy, trust is not something to be had because they've been lying to you the whole time. There's been deception the whole time. The relationship is not what you thought it was, not what you think it is. Now, I'm not talking about like something happened and they lied, like needs to be dealt with. I'm talking about like the whole time. The agreement you thought you were in, you were not in, believe them and adjust accordingly. But here go Jacob, verse 27. Complete this week of wedding celebration, and we will also give you this younger one in return for working yet another 7 years for me. So a little bit more of Laban's nastiness is coming out. Now he's renegotiating the terms of the agreement. And I know we talked about how we can redefine agreements, that we have in relationships, and it's true, we can. But if someone redefines the agreement in a relationship that you have agreed to be part of and you don't agree to the new agreement, then don't do what Jacob did. Verse 28, and Jacob did just that. You work 7 years, find out you've been tricked. You're feeling a little egotistical, like you're the center of the universe and the things you do to other people shouldn't happen to you, but you still have a legitimate point, like you still should not have been deceived. And then he gives you his reason why he lied to you for 7 years. And then he renegotiates the terms, like, hey, how about this? How about I double the price? If you went through the drive-through and you placed your order and they put the order on the screen, everything that you got, and it shows the total, your total is $26.50. And please pay at the window. Then you get to the window and they're like, we're not going to give you your food, not for $26.50. How about $53? $53 and we'll give you what you ordered. We pull around to the front. But that's what Jacob did. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll pay double. And Jacob did just that. He finished the week of celebration, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. What Laban said to him is, yeah, I'm pulling the rug from under you in this relationship, and what you've been working toward and what we agreed we were working towards. I'm changing that. But hey, check this out. Just go with it. That's what Laban said. Just go with it. It's not our custom, but hey, check it out. It's not our custom to do this. So I lied to you, tricked you, let you do all this work for me. But I was never really going to do that. But check this out. Let's just keep the party going. Like, come on, don't make a scene. Don't make this a big deal. Has anyone ever done that to you? I know it's nothing like I said it was going to be, but come on, don't be a joy kill. Let's finish the party. Everyone's having such a good time. Don't ruin this just because I lied to you. Like, come on, be cool. Look at all my people here. And Jacob did that. He just went with it. Let's not just go with it. As a community, as brother and sister, let's not just go with it. Let's not just go with things that are not healthy. Let's not just go with people taking advantage of us. Let's not just go with people seeing other people take advantage of other people. Oh, was that too far? Was that too far? I shouldn't have said that. If I know that Laban, let's say I'm one of Laban's boys, and I'm coming to the wedding feast, but I know Jacob over here working, and Laban like, yeah, I'm not really gonna give him the young one. Got to get rid of this old one first. These children around here, get rid of both of them. If you know that someone is doing someone wrong, like you have firsthand knowledge that they're doing them wrong, don't just go with it. That makes you an accomplice. I just saw today or yesterday that one of the police officers who stood guard while another murderous police officer took the breath from George Floyd, he just got sentenced to serve his time in prison. Now, he wasn't the one who actively killed George Floyd, but he absolutely should be in prison. Why? Because he stood by and let someone cause irreparable harm to another. And if in our trashy society, fallen from grace, Lord, come quick, pull the plug on the simulation. If in that society, we can, even if it takes decades, finally see some justice for the person who had the opportunity to stop the bad, they get in trouble because they didn't stop it. If in our society that can happen, how much more as children of God, members of Christ's body, family members to one another, ought we be looking out for one another? Let's not let the United States justice system do a better job at looking out for people and saying, hey, you knew better, you should have done better, and there are consequences. Let's not let our allegedly blind justice system do better than us. Don't just go with it. What we should go with and what we should go for is healthy relationship. There's going to be some work for these relationships. And again, we were in Genesis 29, verses 18 through 28. And there's work that has to be done to achieve a certain type of relationship. There needs to be a definition for the relationship. And that is because we need to know what we can look out for from one another. We need to know what's the agreement, what's the covenant between us. And we do unto others as we would want done towards us. And don't just go with it, whether it's happening to us or happening to another person. Because every time we just go with what is unhealthy, we're co-signing it. We're co-signing it. A friend of mine who's from what would be considered the deep South here in these United States of America, said that they prefer the racists down where they're from versus the racists here in Texas. And they said, I like my racist. Like, I just want to know. I need to know. That way I can just stay away from that. But when it's concealed and you think somebody's your friend, but they don't look out for you because they actually don't like you, that's a whole nother night. We could spend a whole night talking about that one.